Hey guys, John here with Terminal Goblin Games, and welcome back to Tabletop Talk. Today we're going to be talking with DM Blackwall. Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. For those of you who don't know, Blackwell is working on a RPG called Horde Wars. It is a D12 system, and you've been working on it for what'd you say, like 2 or 3 years now?
Yeah, it's been actively in playtesting for 2 years. We've been working on it for 3 years.
All right, awesome. And that's a long time. It's been a while since I don't think I've ever dedicated that much time straight to a project.
Well, we wanted it to be as good as we could, and then also to have thorough playtesting so that hopefully the rules are clear, and so that we can make sure that the game is flowing smoothly at the table. We were really interested. My co-author Nate and I were really interested in having as streamlined an experience as possible. So, for example, instead of like what Dungeons and Dragons does with a fireball, where there's a saving throw for every creature in the area, our version of that kind of effect is a single attack roll compared to the defense of each creature in the area. And so this tends to actually to save a lot of time because you're only waiting for one dice roll rather than waiting for 5 or 10 or 20.
Okay, so it's kind of like a reverse DC. So instead of casting a spell or whatever, and then or no, it's like picking a lock, right? Like it's got a DC, and you just need to do the one roll to see if you get it.
Yes.
Also, I just realized I said Blackwell and not Blackwall. I can't read.
That's not a terrible problem.
And like we had talked about before, this just so the audience knows, because they are not privy to our private conversations, unless they're at the NSA or something like that. Anyways, the topic of today is keeping the game flowing smooth. And, everything that kind of entails, like keeping it fluid, keeping it going, and just to kind of stopping any sort of stop and, oh, how does that work again? That kind of stuff. That's actually a really cool concept, your single roll fireball. I'm already thinking of ways I could use that. I actually, just this past Friday, my players have a group of skeletons called the Skelly Squad that they befriended due to some dumb luck. And they were like, oh, well, there's 10 of these and we want them to attack. Do you want me to roll 10d20? And I was like, no, that'd be kind of dumb. Just roll once and we'll just say it's all or nothing.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Here, let me show you the actual text from the game. So that should be visible to you now.
Yeah, and I will just read it out here. So Fireball, 1 per day per tier. Select 3 combat space diameter within medium range. Make an attack for 4d8 fire damage and apply it to each target in the area. If you would miss a target, instead it takes half damage. Okay, so anything within the 3 square sphere there is going to have their defense rolled against. And if it misses, they take half damage.
Exactly. And medium range is just a game term for us to quickly reference how far away a thing is. It's specifically 48 yards or meters, but it wouldn't be difficult if you wanted to play with a more fast and loose approach to simply use them as descriptive words rather than specific gridded distances.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Here in the past couple of months, I've kind of moved away from the tactical grid-based stuff. I still give my players a map and a grid, but it's kind of more loosey-goosey. So I've switched to side initiative. Have you ever played Cyberpunk Red?
I've read it. I have some of the miniatures and stuff because I've played a Cyberpunk game here, but a different one. I like the genre. The game looked a little clunky to me.
There's some fun stuff in there. If you could get over the layout. I actually had to make a quick reference because I'm like, I don't know where this is in here. And when I do find it, I'm like, why is it here? I kind of like how they do distance. They just kind of switch between yards and meters and stuff because they're like, 1 square is roughly 2 unit of measurement, whichever one we use in that sentence.
Yes, I'm doing the same kind of thing with that. Each combat space is 2 yards or 2 meters. Okay. Just so there's an easy conversion for my Canadian friends.
Oh yeah, of course. We love our leaves here. I really like stuff like this. I was a fan of when I was first learning RPGs, I learned with Pathfinder, so every square was 5 feet. Yeah, 5 feet, I think. I was like, oh, okay, 15 feet's 3 squares, and I thought it worked out great. At least, it does when I don't forget the scale. If anyone's ever watched my adventure design videos, it's not very uncommon for me to have 30-foot long tables because I forgot scale while I'm drawing.
Yeah. So for my game, we are also writing it as much as possible to be grid or hex neutral. So you can play on a hexagonal map or you can play on a gridded map, like with squares. All of the abilities are written that way.
Oh, okay, cool. So like, there's just like set distances. Like a medium is always like 5 squares or whatever.
Yeah, medium is 24 combat spaces. As far as the whole keeping the game flowing thing, one thing that I've learned is that if the players know there's something bad going to happen in a short amount of time, it tends to get them a lot more motivated to fix what's in front of them. And so, an idea I learned from another DM was to, at the beginning of a combat or shortly after, or for example, when they try to pick a lock, just to roll a 4-sided die, because everyone can kind of see the result very easily. There aren't that many sides to it, and you then start using that as a countdown timer. So every time a round goes by, you tick the die down, and then whatever thing you rolled for happens. Whether that's enemy reinforcement showing up, whether that's a new monster, whether that's that they accidentally activated a trap that goes off after a few seconds, that kind of thing.
Okay, so that's like kind of like visualizing the dungeon turn or whatever. Well, sort of. So technically, like nothing bad has to happen at the end of every dungeon turn.
Right. But the thing is, it increases tension and plays with the idea that the players are going to metagame anyway.
I could see that. Yeah, like okay, we got four turns until something bad happens. So that means
Yep.
we need to go about that. I like the use of timers. I also really like putting in like one-way doors and stuff like that. I usually don't do it in that sense though. I usually have something very related to the story or whatever they're going for. Not like the overarching story, but like the story of what the players are doing, right? Like my players decided to take up space or like to make a home at the top of the castle version or castle portion of my mega dungeon. And they went and set up, they've got a bunch of troops there, and one of my players was like, "Hey, who owns this place? Are they going to be angry with us that we're doing this?" And I was like, "You're going to have to find out," because they don't know that I have a messenger arriving there at a certain date.
Right. Right, but I find as it relates to getting the game flowing, that it's very helpful for them to realize that something's around the corner, something's about to happen. It kind of spurs them to action, even if that thing is a good thing, because they don't know, of course, what the timer's for. And the same is true for helping drive like not so much a plot as a specific situation. For example, if you have the players fight a bunch of goblins, say, and then you have a scene where there's a bunch of goblin babies, you're going to have a really, one, possibly terrible thing happen, but two, you're probably going to have your game come to a screeching halt as the players debate what to do, unless they are very used to let's slaughter all the things that we don't like, the plan.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we've that's definitely something that comes up quite often for me. Not the goblin baby thing, but the players talking about plans and stuff like that.
Right. Whereas if you took the same opponents, the goblins, and you had them about to eat a baby, now that is going to substantially change how quickly your players decide to act.
Oh yeah, because you're forcing upon them, to do or die, basically.
I mean, it doesn't hurt them. They can totally ignore it and leave if they want to. But because they're real humans playing a game who do have some idea of what right and wrong actually are, it kind of spurs them to action and makes them want to interact with that thing.
Yeah, no, that definitely does it. And there's also, with that sort of thing, there's roleplay opportunities. Like, if the guy playing the cleric who's like, okay, so out of character, I'm cool with killing these goblin babies, but in character, I'm gonna be pretty angry about that.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, even if they pick the morally wrong option, it will still make for a more memorable story. And frequently players will figure out some way to kind of have their cake and eat it too, where they pick something you did not expect, kind of solve the problem in a unique way.
Oh yeah, that's the best thing. Like that one creature that I showed you, the mason on my dungeon, my mega dungeon that like goes around and like bricks up corpses and stuff in the walls, like he Monte Crisco's them. The players actually ran into him and he ignored them. Like he looked at him and was like, "I see you," and then he just kept walking away. Well, they decided that they don't know. They're like, "What is he doing with these corpses?" So they were like, "Should we bring a sheep?" And they were like, "Nah, we should just kill him." So they went downstairs and they ended up finding a bunch of sturges. And they were like, "Hey, what happens if we just like wrap these up in a bag for that guy?" So then they waited around, and the guy the creature walks in, and then they ended up befriending him. And I was like, "You guys spent like half an hour like getting a battle strategy in order to like kill this guy because you had no idea what he could do, and then you're just like, hey, you want some dead sturges?"
Yeah, that makes sense. And then like when it comes to like game design and also playing around the table, I mean for what I found is that if the players have clearly defined abilities and then have generally available skills, like, you know, maybe if you're trained at, say, engineering or athletics or whatever it might be, that they can use that in a variety of ways creatively. But then they also have like defined combat abilities, like specific spells or specific, you know, cool attacks or that kind of thing. That the mixture of defined abilities and then kind of freeform skills tends to keep the game moving as long as the list of abilities isn't overwhelming. Like if they have 4 or 5 things they can do that are unique to the character, they're in great shape. But if they have like 40, game stops.
Yeah, you get because they get stuck in that analysis paralysis. I had that issue with two of my players. So my group started out with Pathfinder, and I had 2 veterans and 2 total newbies. And the newbies just sat there, like, you know, looking at their sheet, like wondering, what can I do? Because, you know, to them it wasn't it's not like a mechanicized game. Like, and they didn't know what they could do and what they were allowed to do. But then when I switched over to, you know, playing OSR stuff, basic fantasy in particular, those players got more into it because they were like, hey, you know, on paper I can do less things, but also I can do more things because there's nothing that says I can't.
Right.
I do agree though, having like, you know, the niches and like the certain things that classes can do is great, especially if it's kept like kind of small.
Yeah, and it's not too bad once they learn like a group of 4 or 5 things, if they start picking up 1 or 2 over the course of several levels, because then they actually have the other things memorized.
That's actually a kind of another point there. The memorization of how things work. I know me. I can only keep a certain amount of things in my head. So when we were playing more crunchy games, they would always come up like, "Oh, hey, I'm doing this. Well, why can't you do that?" "Oh, well, because like, you know, it says right here," and I'm like, "Oh, well, I don't remember that at all. Jeez."
Right. I did want to mention for your listeners, I can be reached at DM Blackwall on Twitter or at blackwall1983@gmail.com. Because, yeah, if anyone's interested in hearing more about my game or interested in coming to an event, we're planning to demo it at Grand Con on Labor Day weekend in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
I wish I was closer. I would definitely come. I've actually not been to an RPG con. Maybe one of
It'd be
these days.
fun, man. I went 2 years ago before COVID shut it down for a couple of years.
That's the story of a lot of stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
So something that I like to do in terms of like keeping everything going, and I learned this from roguelikes, so I like how this goes. You know, light and rations, you know, the hunger clock. I think that's like a good built-in thing to keep people moving, especially if you still count down while they are like talking and planning. So what I'll do if my players get into, you know, a conversation about what they should do, I'll just occasionally say, all right, you know, another dungeon turn passed. And then they're like, oh, shit, yeah, we're actually moving in time. We're not paused.
Right. One other thing that you can do with that sort of thing, at least if depending on how you have like random monster encounters and such, one thing you can do is basically give them a warning. I mean, you don't phrase it that way, but you go, hey, so if another 5 minutes go by in real life, we're going to have some time go by in game. Let them, you know, finish their discussion. But if they continue, I usually don't say anything further. I just roll a timer. I don't tell them if it's good or bad, but yep, a thing's gonna happen.
That's also a good way to do it. I tend to just like verbally tell them, and eventually they caught on that okay, well conversations progress in real time. It's kind of weird. It's one of those things to where like it makes sense as you're doing them, but like thinking about it, it's really strange. Like okay, well we talk in real time, but we move 60 squares per 10 minutes game time, and it gets kind of funky there. But that's in terms of keeping like a standardized time or whatever. For me, I don't keep like super strict. I keep track of the day, and like I have a joke that adventuring hours are 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. After that, that's when they wake up and do all their stuff, and then that's when they go delving and stuff. As far as like, oh, we were in the dungeon for 10 dungeon turns, and we talked around and stuff for like 30 minutes. You're like, oh yeah, it's like 2 p.m.
Yeah, I do. I do generally track by the hour, at least as far as not like traveling across country, but as far as like dungeon delving goes. Mostly because torches in real life only burn for like 40 minutes, maybe half an hour, and so generally speaking, I'll err on the side of the players and go, okay, your torch can burn for up to an hour. It's not realistic, but it's close enough. But after an hour, it's out. So unless you have some other light source, you have a problem.
Okay. Is all torches an hour, or is there like variable lengths? Like I know in basic fantasy, a torch lasts for 1d6 plus 1 dungeon turns, which is kind of annoying because sometimes you're like, okay, it's only going to last 2 dungeon turns. It's like 20 minutes.
Right. So in real life, a torch is like 10 to 40 minutes, usually 30 or 40. And so that's why I'm just like, well, I'll just say an hour. That's an easy number to track, and that's erring in the player's favor. That's going, yeah, you can really stretch this out. And then for my game, I have basically a feature where you're like a dedicated underground explorer. And if you pick that, then for you, torches will last up to 8 hours. And lamps, instead of burning for 8 hours, one thing of lamp oil will burn for up to 24.
Okay, kind of to show that you're used to doing this sort of stuff, and you know the optimal wrapping and tar technique and all that stuff.
Exactly. And so I have, in one of the test games, I have a player who's done that, and that particular group are playing as members of a thieves guild. And so she is uniquely suited to like going in sewers and dungeons.
Just took the rat race option.
Yeah, no, my playable species, I stuck with humanoids. The closest I've gotten to monsters is orcs. In my game, orcs are a playable species, but they are explicitly Norse. We're talking Viking longships raiding up and down the coast, full of orcs looking for silver and slaves, because that's what real Vikings were doing.
I don't know, man. Did anyone ever like just stop and ask them like, "Do you want a hug?"
Yeah, they got along sometimes with local populations, but not usually for long periods unless they decided to move there. So, for example, Normandy in France, a bunch of Vikings actually moved there at the invitation of the French king and intermarried with French nobility. And so those guys totally got along with the French. The other Vikings did not.
That is cool. But I mainly just stick to the demi-humans, humans and the core 4 or whatever. I was never a big fan of the other races.
No, I'm not either. But that's why I did the core 4, and then I added orc. Orcs are in my game partly because I'm annoyed with the modern racist stereotyping, and partly because I wanted them to be more useful than just basically being big goblins. Because orcs, in general, in role-playing games, are basically just big goblins, like in terms of their morals and their activities, and I wanted them to have a far more unique and interesting culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all guilty of using orcs as big goblins. I mean, I know I am. Sometimes I have them literally be big goblins. I like having different like phenotypes of things running around. It's like, sometimes orcs are big goblins, other times they're just big, angry, not people because they are monsters, but definitely more akin to like a Viking, like you said. To us humans, their morals are not known.
Yeah. So I tried to differentiate them. The goblins and the orcs for my game pretty heavily. So like, you might not want orcs as your neighbors, but if you had to pick between them and goblins, you'd pick the orcs every time. There's a difference between like raiding slavers and cannibals.
Yeah,
And my goblins are cannibals.
one of the kind of on the same wavelength there. I really like the monsters as monsters. Partly because it ties into the topic of the show, keeping the game flowing. You know,
Yeah.
Sometimes a moral quandary is fun, right? Like the goblin babies. But if every session has a goblin baby moment, eventually your players are just going to be like, what the hell is this, philosophy class? We came here to kill monsters.
Oh, exactly. So the way I heard this described by an older game designer is everybody loves zombies, which is to say, in games, it is fun to have irredeemably evil opponents who must be destroyed.
Yeah, absolutely. It cuts down the thinking. Like, oh well, something needs to be done about these because they are doing these awful things all of the time.
Well, that, and it actually increases player enjoyment, not to just have that all the time, but at least a good chunk of the time, that those kinds of things, because you can feel good about having defeated those kinds of monsters. You can feel good about slaying zombies. There's no question about whether or not that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, because at its core, everyone wants to play or wants to be a hero. Like, no, I don't think a single person in history, even the worst ones, stopped and said, I am the bad guy. They're always like, no, I'm doing what must be done.
Yeah, yeah. And so if you're able to present encounters to your players that play with the idea that they are real humans who really do understand morality to some degree, have some of that stuff to like drive them forward, but having a fair amount of actual monsters that need to be slain and are a threat to the players or to the society as a whole, I think really will help the game move, but also help the players have more fun.
Yeah, because it increases their attachment to the world. One of the things I really like about old school games is hiring retainers and specialists and stuff. It attaches them, right? So it's not like, oh, we need a blacksmith and an alchemist, so Johnny took blacksmith alchemy in his skills, and so now we're just a traveling band of people who are an island, and we do all of our things ourselves, and we're super sufficient, and we don't need the help from anyone. Like, that's okay for like a certain type of game, but I think that just plays too much into the player detachment. Like, everyone's an adult. We know that the world is a fantasy world, but we don't need our player characters knowing it is a fantasy world, right?
Are you saying you don't want a roving band of murder hobos?
Are they pointed at me or not?
Yeah, no, one other thing I think that is important, which you kind of mentioned, is that the players like the world, that they actually have NPC. I mean, they're not really friends, but the analog to friends, associates, acquaintances in the game world who they care about to some degree, because that will make them want to save the setting, like protect the town because they like the people in it, or defend the kingdom because they like the king, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like that one meme where it's like, you've traveled far across the lands and found me, the one person who can raise the dead. Do you wish to raise a companion, a lover? No, I want to raise Frank the Farter because he made me laugh once.
Yeah,
and
yeah. No, I agree.
And players tend to get attached to like sometimes it's things you would understand and NPCs you understand, but sometimes it's just stuff that's like totally random. I had players get attached to a guy just because he had a funny last name. Last name was McErkadane, which I got from like some random generator. I don't know if that's a real name. Apologies to the McErkadanes out there. So they ended up turning a dungeon into McErkadane's Rest, and they employed his family to run this inn for like the next 2 years.
Oh yeah, years ago when I was playing D&D 3.5, they I forget what it was. I think it was Dungeon Magazine or maybe Dragon Magazine. One of them put out basically a level progression so you could play as a dragon, like from level 1 as a player character. So I decided to play with that in the game world, and I had a level 1, level 2 dragon who demonstrated that he knew the rules of the game. And so he kept choosing to level up as a wizard instead of a dragon so he'd never die of old age. And the players, they just got such a kick out of it because it was the kind of thinking that they would use in that edition of D&D.
It makes me think of the Bag of Rats fighter. So like a fighter takes, I think it was cleave that allows them to, or something like that, to make an extra attack when they kill something. I carry a bag of rats and just like kill them and get like 80 attacks.
Yeah, that kind of thinking, exactly. But but they got really attached to that little baby dragon who was like a 20th level wizard because he basically was in on the joke. Anyway, so that kind of thing can be really fun for the players, or if you have NPCs who have unique qualities. I think that's really good. It doesn't even have to be many. It can be literally one thing.
Yeah. I've had an NPC who he was an alchemist, and his entire shtick was making like weird potions. Like he had a degree in thaumaturgy, as he said it. So instead of making like a potion of resist cold, he'd make a potion of assist cold, and it would just like make you colder and stuff like that. The players loved it.
Oh yeah, I did that with an alchemist who he was a perfectly normal and effective alchemist, except there were two other NPCs, some kobolds, who kept breaking into his shop and messing with his production line. And so sometimes he'd like light his own roof on fire and stuff, and the players thought it was hilarious once they figured out that it was these two kobolds who kept breaking into his shop and messing with stuff.
There's one more thing here that I wanted to talk about. One of the things, and I know that people talk all the time about the actual play shows, and that they give some false expectations and stuff like that of the DMs being like actors and stuff. I actually do think there is a positive thing that people should take from these shows. Now, let's ignore the fact that a good amount of them are scripted and all that kind of stuff. But the thing I think a lot of new DMs should take from it is there's never a point that I've seen anyways, I haven't watched a lot of them, but there's never a point to which the Dungeon Master stops and like looks through his rulebook for a rule. And that is the biggest way to get your session to grind to a halt, because once you break out that rulebook, you are in it for the long haul, because then there's going to be talk of interpretations and stuff like that. The best thing to do is to make something up, and I think anyways, is to just like make something up real quick, and then if it's not satisfactory, look it up after the game. If it's something that's like super weird that you're never going to see again, then don't worry about it.
Well, let me show you a way that I've tried to address that. So I'm gonna bother with all the subsidiary headings. I'm just gonna show you the basic thing because that way it'll be short to read.
All right. Core rules. The core mechanic of Horde Wars is to roll 1d12, adding the relevant attribute or skill and any bonuses. Then compare the result to the difficulty class of the task. A roll of 12 on 1d12 before adding any modifiers is an automatic success. Difficulty class is abbreviated as DC. Game Master rules a given task is impossible. He should not ask the players to roll a 1d12 and instead inform them and offer him a chance to make a different choice. Normal daily activities such as eating, opening unlocked doors, or donning clothing do not require a die roll. I disagree on that last one. I have failed to put on clothes before.
But have you failed so spectacularly that there were consequences?
Actually, I once had some jeans that had like some holes in it, and like I was getting dressed too quick, and I put my foot through the hole, and it just like ripped it.
Okay, but that's like 1 in 1,000.
Yeah, most people aren't as gifted as me.
But what do you think of that? This is me just going, hey, here's the core resolution mechanic. So if you don't know a rule, use this rule.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely awesome, because that's pretty much what I would do, right? That's what I would do normally. Sometimes I'm feeling weird, and I'll just go with I'll give you an X and 6.
Mm-hmm.
That's a kind of another thing. Players only care about consistency in things in which are life-threatening to their player characters. I'll make all sorts of weird rulings, and eventually my players just stop asking why and just went with it.
I think having a core resolution mechanic can really help, like just a base rule that is how most things in your game work. It's why I really think that the 3.5 edition of D&D was an actual improvement over AD&D, even though I started playing AD&D, because it standardized a number of things that were their own separate kind of weird die rolls. And in that way, I think 5th edition D&D 2, in that respect, is better in that, again, it helped standardize how a rule should function. Now, there are other design choices in both those editions I do not like. But that part is probably good. What do you think?
No, I absolutely agree. It was incredibly helpful when I was running Pathfinder for new players to tell them anything you want to try to do, you were going to roll a d20. If you need to roll anything after that d20, I'll let you know. I'm guessing it's the same thing in 5th edition, right? I've only ever played 5th edition once, and I was a player, and I played like how most people play a game for the first time. You learn enough to make a character, and then you're like, the DM will tell me what to do. I'll just try to do stuff.
So yes, except that it added one degree of complexity, which is the advantage-disadvantage mechanic. So basically you go, do you have an advantage on this thing? If so, roll the d20 twice using the higher result. Or do you have an advantage on this or a disadvantage on this thing? If so, roll the d20 twice using the lower result. Whereas like Pathfinder or the game that I'm working on, Horde Wars, I'm just giving you like a flat bonus or penalty to the roll, right? But they're doing the roll twice and select.
Okay, yeah. I do know that, or at least my friend for like a custom class, I was like, oh yeah, I'll just have him have rerolls. He was like, no, have him roll with advantage like 5th edition because like the math works out. And I was like, I don't want to do math right now. You can explain this to me later.
Well, one thing that you might get a kick out of, I don't know, do you enjoy playing halflings very much?
Generally no. I usually go for half elves if they're available. But lately just humans.
I generally play as a human or an orc myself, but I have a couple players who enjoy playing halflings. So the halflings in my game actually use this dice thing we were just talking about, where they at the beginning of each of their turns, they get to roll a 12-sided die. And at any point during their turn, they can substitute that die roll for another d12 roll.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, I like that.
Now, that might be a terrible idea. Like, they could just roll a 1, but...
It gives them a little option. I do like stuff like that makes races feel unique and not just like flavors of human.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I wanted each of them to have something unique. Sometimes it's something that's both unique and funny, like my dwarves get drunk at half the normal rate and resist toxic damage.
That is perfect for a dwarf.
But that can be really fun for a player to role play. Like if you're a dwarf and you're in a town full of humans, go get in a drinking competition. You're probably going to win.
Yeah, that's great.
I wanted to ask you, as it relates to streamlining the game, how do you deal with traps? And I don't mean like a pit trap that's kind of stationary. I mean activated traps. So like when you open the door, this bad thing happens to you. Or when you walk across this pressure plate, this bad thing happens to you. How do you adjudicate that to help kind of keep the game flowing?
So what I do for that is, I don't remember where I read it, heard it, but it was something like a trap doesn't go off every time someone steps over it. So what I will do is, if a trap is activated, I have like I just have all my dice sitting out. And so I kind of like mentally assign players die. I'll just like roll those d6s real quick and be like, okay, whoever gets a 1 and whoever is in line, that's who it's going off on, if it goes off at all. Saying that out loud, that sounds like it takes forever, but it's actually pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends on if it's a trap that automatically resets. That's fair. But let's assume that it is one that resets for a moment, like I don't know, a repeating crossbow or like a fire trap where it just like shoots out a gout of flame at you whenever you step on the pressure plate.
I would probably, if that were the case, I would probably roll a d6 and be like, okay, it's going to be that many, like we'll say seconds or whatever. Mm-hmm. But generally, I would think that if a player got shot with a crossbow, like they would immediately either go back or just like, oh well. But if they continue to go on, like, oh, well, what are the odds it's a repeating crossbow? I would roll.
Hey, man, that can make for a really interesting encounter, at least. At least if you establish the standard of these things don't reload,
and then at the end, I wonder how many shots it would take for them to like understand it's the same crossbow. Especially like if you put it in like kind of a narrow hallway to where they'd have to like duck or something. Really, after like the second time, they'd be like, okay.
Yeah, one thing that I've tried out, and maybe you might enjoy it or not. I've been experimenting with having traps that trigger at the first time that you would go into the target area each round. So for example, the first player to step on the pressure plate each round, or the first player to hit the tripwire each round, then the trap goes off, and then it resets next round. Because that gives the players a way, as soon as they figure out that that's how that trap works, that gives the players a way to kind of game the system.
You'll have stuff like, okay, I'm gonna push these orcs back into this fire trap.
Yeah. And now that they've triggered it, we can walk through safely.
Yeah, that's actually something I don't think I've ever had a fight happen in like the same room as a trap. Something
You should. It's a lot of fun.
I've done the classic like, hey, this expensive thing you came to get that's a very fragile. You're now in a fight in a room and it's up on a wobbly pedestal. Good luck. I've done that.
Yeah, no, that can be good.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking with me for a little while.
You bet. It's been great. Let me know when it goes up, and I will try to do my best to promote it.
Yeah, definitely. And if anyone is watching this and they use Twitter, definitely go follow at DM Blackwall to hear more about Horde Wars. And I'll link it and stuff in the comments, and then Blackwall's also in my comments and stuff, so you'll be able to find them. But yeah, thank you, man. Thank you again.